But up here on the platform, we've been instructed to think about the role of the contemporary nation-state, the question of sovereignty, and untangle all the issues of national identity. And as John said, as a thread running through this debate, we're going to have Adam Zamoyski, and he's an eminent historian who was born in New York, spent many years in Europe, has written books on European history, is a naturalized Brit. And he's going to be the person who's going to set out the questions that he would like answered before he changes his mind. I think it'll be a triumph if we get him to come down on one side or the other at the end. But he's the person whose loyalty everyone here is fighting for. And then we're going to have the in and outers taking turns to give you their perspective. So, Adam, would you like to begin?
Thank you. I think I ought to declare that although I'm an immigrant Pole, I haven't taken anybody's job, as I'm a freelance historian. I should also declare that as well as being Polish, I've got French blood. I've even got some of the most boring German blood going in the 19th century. Some unauthorized Russian blood due to a volatile ancestress, and even some Italian robber blood from rather earlier on, and even a bit of Scots blood from way back. Now, I have to say that perhaps undecided is the wrong word to use. What I am is absolutely baffled, and by the argument, because I haven't actually heard a single argument for either staying in or getting out that is convincing. First of all, there are the economic, so-called economic arguments, which are patently absurd. All these people telling us that, oh, a cake of soap may cost 38 pence more in 2027 if we leave, or that 11 million jobs will be lost, or whatever, are talking through their hats. As are the people who are telling us that every week we send £350 million to Brussels. The fact is that nobody knows what's going to happen, whether we leave or stay. We might all be hit by an asteroid tomorrow, but the fact is that nothing is predictable. If it were, instead of making silly predictions and hectoring us, they'd be sitting on a yacht in the Caribbean drinking cocktails. Because if people really knew how markets operate and what happens to currencies in these situations. So I think that's one argument which I haven't heard a single intelligent one, and I don't think we will, and I hope we won't tonight. The idea that somehow if there's a Brexit, it'll take 7 years of limbo where we can't actually travel or sell things abroad or buy French cheese is also a sort of nonsense. When it comes to the political arguments that have been trotted out, these are rarely not only absurd, but they are mendacious and quite harmful. First of all, there's the absolutely wrong-headed argument that Europe has brought peace to the continent. It's a nonsense. I've written a very good paper on the subject, if anybody's interested. Conclusively states the case. Wars come and go, and there are very specific reasons for every war, and they change, and they are never the same, and you never know when one's going to come. It's worth remembering that a huge, grandiose and ambitious palace of peace was opened in Brussels in order to usher in the new era of European harmony and peace in 1913. So I don't think one should ever take these things for granted. The idea that somehow also there is some kind of wonderful solidarity which is establishing itself is also a historical fallacy. It's simply not true. The fact is that, as in any committee, federation, club, there are always people jockeying for their own position, and rightly so, particularly in democratic states where they have to justify it to their electorates. And you only have to look at how energy policy is conducted by various countries to realize that there is no such thing as overall solidarity. Equally, the whole idea of stronger in or out is a completely delusional concept, because if push were to come to shove, then everybody will act in unpredictable ways and according to their interests. But tonight we are really focusing on the cultural and intellectual arguments. And I brought along a copy of last week's Times Literary Supplement. I don't know how many of you take this august journal, but this is really the sort of where I hope that our very eminent guests tonight are going to put us all right, because this august journal printed last week a letter which was written, it's called a love letter. And it's written, it says, "Sir, 3 European citizens, an Austrian, a Frenchman, and a Greek, got together one evening and wrote a short letter to the British people. We were not trying to sell a point of view. We're not trying to convince anybody and say, gons en blah de blah. We called it a love letter. We then asked various other Europeans whether they would like to sign it. And we were not surprised that they all did. Nobel Prize winners and international footballers, great writers and scientists, film directors and composers, architects and mathematicians, and so on, all signed this. Well, let me read you this love letter. This is from all these very, very eminent people. It says, "Sir, all of us in Europe respect the right of the British people to decide whether they wish to remain within the European Union. It is your decision, and we will all accept it." Never that big of them. "Nevertheless, it will help the undecided to make up their minds. If it would help the undecided, we would like to express how very much we value having the United Kingdom in the European Union. It is not just treaties that join us to your country, but bonds of admiration and affection. All of us hope that you will vote to renew them. Britain, please stay." Well, they've just contradicted themselves. And maybe some of these Nobel Prize winners are too close to their test tubes to see one, but surely the footballers should have spotted an old goal. But then the TLS printed a whole lot of letters on the subject of Europe from various eminent contributors. And this was really extraordinary. Most academics go on about how we must stay in Europe because of research grants, the Erasmus project, and various such, and conferences. Historians, the eminent historian, Felipe Fernandez Armesto, writes that the only hope of securing a future for Europe is by staying in and so on. Various people say they like the Italian restaurants, and somebody mentions how nice it is having a Polish bakery around the corner. Well, there were Viennese bakeries in this country from the 18th century, and probably French ones in the 19th, and maybe even Polish ones, but certainly most of the Polish bakeries in this country arrived here in 1945 as a result not of European treaties, but of war, as did, and most of the Italian restaurants in this country were founded in the 40s and 50s by Italian POWs who rather liked the country and stayed here. Frankly, it's quite extraordinary. Out of 30-something intellectuals, only 4 made the point that actually it's not it's not the sentimental reasons that there is that there are other reasons that Europe exists without necessarily treaties. Now,
Adam, you've got 1 minute left.
Yes, I can see huge advantages to the EU. I think the facility of travel is fantastic, but it was always there, and it was always going to be there. I see the regulations as sometimes tiresome, but sometimes useful. But why can I still not plug in my phone charger in any country in the EU? To me, the problem with Europe is that on the one hand, at the practical level, it is both too much and too little, whereas at the level of the idea, this great Europe that all these people are talking about, that's supposed to make us all so much more tolerant and European and marvellous, I can't see the idea, and I feel like quoting Gandhi when he came to England and was asked by, I think it was Mountbatten, what do you think of European civilization? And he answered, well, I think it would be a very good idea.